Medical writing is a good field to understand because it offers you a way to leverage your education, background, and training in a variety of genres. And it's got a lot of flexibility and it's generally done remotely. And it's also one of the things you can do part time to see if you like it. So it's really a good career or side gig for physicians and other clinicians. So today's guest is perfectly suited to tell us about that and see if she agrees with my, assessment. And so I want to welcome to the show for the first time, Dr. Morgan Leaf. Thanks for being here.
Hi, John. Thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, I really like talking to medical writers. Everyone has a different way of doing things. Some specialize, some do a lot of different things. And I do want to pick your brain today specifically so that we can get a little bit into that. But why don't you just start by telling us a little bit about your background and how you made your way into the world of medical writing?
Sure. So, like a lot of your guests, I would say my path from clinical medicine to where I am now was not a direct route, which is not a surprise to anybody probably listening to this podcast. I did know for a while, I'm a pediatrician by training, and I did know that staying in the clinical world was not my ultimate goal in my career. And so I started to think pretty early on in my attending career about what I wanted to do non-clinically. And actually, initially, I was interested in informatics. I mean,
Hmm.
interested enough that I got a master's degree and became board certified. And I thought my career path was taking me maybe into a leadership role within informatics. And then, kind of one thing led to another. I was always that kind of person, probably also like a lot of your listeners, who always had a side gig going on. And I ended up with a side gig where was the pediatric medical editor for a board review company,
Hmm.
not even knowing that that really was in this world of medical writing that I didn't quite yet know about. And as the wheels were turning and I was saying, I'm getting ready to leave clinical medicine. What should I do? I found myself at the SEEK conference, which
Hmm.
I'm you're very familiar with. And through the SEEK conference, I learned specifically about the field of medical writing from Mandy Armitage, who's a fellow physician medical writer who's been in the field for a while. And I said, wait, I'm kind of already doing that, and I really like it. And this can be a whole career. And from there, sort of all the pieces of the puzzle fell into place. And in 2020, I had my planned exit from clinical medicine, which ended up being very fortuitous because I actually planned to leave my job at the time in April of 2020. And my job happened to be connected to the school systems here in California. And so when COVID hit in March of 2020, I would have been out of a job anyway. And lo
Hmm.
and
Wow,
behold,
great timing.
just with all this interesting series of events. And here I am working as a full-time freelance medical writer now.
Okay. Have you ever been employed as a medical writer or have you always done it as a freelancer?
I have not. For me, freelancing was my goal from the get-go. My husband works from home. He runs his own business. I also have a sister who runs her own business from home. And so to me, that lifestyle aspect of it was very appealing. And I never considered an employed role because of that.
I see. Now, so just as a side note, so you and your husband are both kind of not tied to an office. So do you
Mhm.
ever like just travel and work while you're traveling? Can you do that?
Absolutely. All the time. So I'm talking to you today from Santa Barbara, California, where we primarily live. But we're originally from the East Coast and we have our house in Philadelphia still where we met. And we rent that out on a short-term basis. And then for a few months out of the year, we drive cross country with our dogs and stay at our house in Philly and see our family and friends there. And it's just
Nice. That's
everything
really,
I dreamed of when I was working those 80-hour weeks.
every once in a while I talk to someone who has a remote job, but they have a remote job that they have to do from home. It's kind of a weird scenario. But if you work for an
Yeah,
insurance company, they might give you a computer and say you have to work from that site. And it's like, well, what's the
exactly.
point?
Yeah. Not in medical writing. You're your own boss if you're a freelancer.
All right. Well, let's see. We're going to get into learning a little bit here. Just from your perspective, maybe you can describe the types of medical writing, and I kind of got the feeling from reviewing your LinkedIn and all that you've done a lot of those. So you could either go through it, like as an academician, or just the different things you've done. You take your pick.
Sure. Yeah, well, when I'm talking to folks who are in, from the get-go, what is medical writing? I always say I like to divide it into two buckets from the top. And those buckets are regulatory writing and non-regulatory writing. So the regulatory writing bucket, as you know, John, is writing sort of very official paperwork, submissions for the FDA, working for pharma, for biotech. And there are certainly physicians who do that. I would say out of all the physician medical writers out there, more sway towards the non-regulatory areas, but regulatory writing is an option. Most people will tell you it's a little bit easier to get started in regulatory writing by taking an employed position because there's just so much to learn. It's a little hard to pick up on your own. And then the other bucket of the non-regulatory writing is really a very large bucket with many, many items in it. So those of us in the non-regulatory world, one of the primary things that I do is create content for CME activities. I write a lot of blogs. I cover advisory boards. So if folks are familiar with the advisory boards that take place, maybe when a new medication is coming out and all the key opinion leaders get together, usually in a nice city, and have a big meeting about it. They usually hire a medical writer to cover that event for the day and then write up a report. Web content is a big thing for various kinds of websites. And by the way, I'll add, because I think it's important to your listeners, you just never know where your experience is going to come in handy. And believe it or not, that's where informatics has really come in very handy, even though I would not consider myself a practicing informatician at this point. People see my background in informatics and ask me to write about health IT issues a lot, which has been great. What else? There's journalism. And some people focus just on writing content for patients or lay audience. And some people kind of vary between, I write some for clinicians, I write some for patients. So, and of course, manuscripts are another big area of medical writing. So grants, manuscripts, anything in the academic publication realm. I shy away from the manuscripts. That's a little bit of just a big, long project for me. I like things that are a little bit shorter, quicker, and more creative. But there's options for everyone.
Now, what would some typical kind of journalistic type of writing be?
Yeah, so it's interesting because journalism, in the sense as it relates to medical writing, can have a few different definitions, I would say. And by the way, if that's something that interests anyone who's listening, there is, I hope I don't get the acronym wrong, the American College of Healthcare Journalism, ACHJ. I think there is a professional organization for healthcare journalists. And when you think healthcare journalist, what might come to mind is, Sanjay Gupta or somebody on the ground reporting on the news, and that's certainly part of it too. There's also a lot of web content to be generated in the journalism and news area, right? And then the other angle too would be covering conferences. So all the big, meetings for the different specialties have somebody cover them for the different internal outlets for that specialty. So that's actually another aspect of journalism that I don't think comes to mind for some people when they think about that area.
Yeah, that's interesting because I know someone who actually spent 10 years a physician doing just that while he
Oh,
traveled and scuba dived and did other things and
yeah.
he made a living. And then he went back into clinical
Oh,
medicine, if you can imagine that.
wow.
So,
It-
there's
It's
just,
fun. I mean, those meetings are fascinating. Those big oncology meetings and all, there's so much excitement and the stories are so big. And yeah, it's a really interesting world.
now let's see. Can you kind of me some more kind of comparing and contrasting? Because it was pretty obvious that the regulatory, it's just, I don't know, I would call it tedious. It's very particular, a lot of rules and regs. And if you can't do it, they're not going to hire you. You got to be right on. But what are some of the differences in your mind between the other types of writing that you have done? And then I'll get into more questions once you take us first stab at it here. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that There are a lot of angles to consider when you are thinking about what type of medical writing you like. And one thing is how fast do you like to work? How fast do you like to turn around things? I like writing journalistic pieces, but to be honest, I'm so busy, I don't do a lot of them because they have a quick turnaround, right? And
Mm.
like right now, my calendar is booked out a month. Nobody wants a news story a month from now. So that how much pressure you like to work under is part of it. I think how creative you like to be in your work is a
Mm.
big part of it. So what I love about making CME content is I'm getting the opportunity to make some really fancy slide decks and help a graphic designer make interesting graphics and really make content kind of come to life in that sense. So if you have that sort of creative side to you, I think CME content is really appealing. Um, I think a lot of physicians come into medical writing with a passion for communicating with patients because that's, ultimately why a lot of us became physicians. So there is definitely room for that as well. It's a skill to hone, and there are courses out there on that. But if you feel like my passion is really talking more to patients and helping them understand disease processes than it is maybe teaching or informing my fellow clinicians, I think that's one thing to consider. Um, what else? I think who you want to work for and with is probably another consideration
Mm.
too. So what kind of clients do you like? Do you, if you're a freelancer, do you want to, freelance for a large medical communications company? I prefer smaller clients that I have a personal relationship with. And that definitely plays a factor and is part of the learning curve of becoming a medical writer.
Yeah, when you were talking earlier, and I just want to expound on that, I'll have you expound on that a little bit, is this the way I was thinking about it too is from my limited exposure, some things are tend to be a little more involved. And like you were saying that you like the creativity of, let's say, the CME writing. Now
Mhm.
I do some editing for a CME, provider,
Yeah.
and I would never write an article for them because they're 100 pages long. They're 10 hours of CME, and
Oh
they
my God.
have usually 100 to 200 references.
Oh,
And I'm
no,
like, how I would blow my mind.
no,
So
that's not what I do.
yeah. So and also I'm thinking, tell me what you think about this in terms of how efficient can you be in certain genres, and how is the pay associated with
Yeah.
that? When it kind of always boils down to an hourly rate, I guess. But so what's your thinking on that?
That's a great question. And it's funny to hear you say that about the long CME content. I'll tell you what I was working on before I came on our call today is a CME activity that's on Twitter. So I was
Oh
writing a CME
man.
activity in little 285 character bytes, which is I love it. It's just a totally different way to think. I think it's a lot of fun. So there's so much variability out there. You're absolutely right. And as far as efficiency and pay, I think, I mean, to me, being a physician has a huge advantage in the field, in no matter what you do because of that. Because it's important to know that medical writing as a whole, I always tell people if you went to our professional conference, the American Medical Writers Association, and you looked around the room, I don't know for sure. I'm sure the statistic exists somewhere, but I'm going to say 10% of people in there are physicians, right?
Hmm.
And maybe 20, 30% are PhDs, and maybe the other half, bachelor's or master's in some type of science, or bachelor's or master's in journalism or English.
Hmm.
And so it's a very varied group of folks, which is awesome. I have just amazing colleagues that I work with. And it means that when you are coming from the medical profession, where your medical knowledge is really top tier, you're going to save yourself a lot of time. Obviously, people ask me a lot, well, do you only write on pediatric topics? No, I write on everything. But I can guarantee you that even as a pediatrician, when I do a project on prostate cancer, which never came across my radar as a practicing clinician, I can still read and absorb and understand the topic and the data and generate something from it a little faster than somebody who doesn't have that medical school background.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And in fact, the ones that I edit, most of them are, I'd say at least half of them are written by non-physicians.
Yep.
and they're equally good, but I can envision the fact that, yeah, maybe the physicians are a little bit quicker at writing the CME that they're doing.
Sure.
The other thing
Yep.
that's kind of cool there, I believe, is that the way they work is that when it's time to review it, like every 2 or 3 years, they're a lot more efficient because they actually get paid well, almost as much for the initial writing of it.
Mhm.
But I'm sure it takes them, a fraction of the time to review it.
Yeah. And it's a big advantage in the CME world too, because you're often asked to come up with patient cases to accompany an activity. And I
Mm.
think that can be a real stumbling block if you've never seen a patient before. So
Uh,
it's nice just to have that obviously information that you don't even think of as an advantage necessarily, but that's in your head. You know what it is to see a patient, what they're going to say, what they're going to ask. So that comes into play probably more than you even think about as a medical writer.
I'd never thought of that, that never even crossed my mind. So that is a very good point. Okay,
Mhm.
now I know that you do some mentoring, coaching, advising and so forth. So I'm going to kind of flip it around and say, okay, so let's say that someone has a penchant for writing of some sort.
Mhm.
Is there a way that you can help them figure out, other than just doing all of it, for a while, which is can be very inefficient, how to pursue this? You already mentioned some of the characteristics, but maybe there's a way we can approach it, logically from the beginning.
Absolutely. So if you're interested in medical writing and saying this seems really interesting to me, I don't know what field, how do I go forward? I think, a couple of things. First step is definitely do your research. Go to the American Medical Writers Association. Consider joining. It's only like $250 a year, and it's really an amazing professional organization. I can't say enough good about it. It's very, very supportive people. And there are a lot of resources on there about the different areas where you can learn more. You can also join your local chapter and connect with people there to learn more. And then there's a wonderful book written by Dr. Mandy Armitage about going from clinical medicine to medical writing. That's a great resource. You already know Dr. Emma Hitt Nichols has a course that teaches you backgrounds in journalism, CME, manuscripts, and other things you might want to know. So just by starting out and trying to hone your skills, I think that's a good first step that might make you say, oh, okay, yeah, I didn't really like writing that whole manuscript. That was too much for me. Or the CME, I had to look up all those references. That wasn't for me. So that's a good place to start. I always want to caution people that you don't need to go overboard with training or investigating things. There absolutely are certificate programs out there for medical writing. University of San Diego has one, University of Chicago has one. If you really want to pursue that, go for it. But don't do it because you feel like it's a requirement to enter the profession, because it is not. Most of us don't do such, multi-year programs to get into the profession. So it's not a bad thing, but it's not a necessity. And then I think you get out there, you try it out, you see what you like, and the fact of the matter is kind of what happened for me and how I continue down the path of CME writing is that was the work that was coming to me. A lot of the work that you're going to get in medical writing comes from networking. So you meet, you network, you introduce to people, and they offer you work. And sometimes that kind of pushes you along your path as well. So really networking and talking to people, especially about what they do, is a great way to learn if that's the field for you. So you do advisory boards. How much do you have to travel for that? How much notice do they give you? What's the pay like? And most medical writers are super happy to talk with you on any specific topic. They're very sharing group. So anything that you can ask questions about, do. And it's a process and you can change. It's not like going into residency
Yeah,
where
for
you're
sure.
stuck. You can change your mind.
Excellent. Now, let's see. One thing I was going to ask you, yeah, the are most of the projects that you're doing now from recurring relationships, with a given company or firm or whatever it might be.
They are, yes, which is
Yeah.
really exciting. And that was a big part of the growing process for me over the past 4 years or so, expanding my business. Because of course, when you start out, right, you're like, I'll take any client that will pay me anything.
Mhm.
And then you kind of reach the point, okay, I have this many clients, and maybe I'm even getting more work than I can handle. And then for me, I came to just a really lovely position of being able to choose who I wanted to work with and work with people who really reflected my values and who I have a lot of fun working with. I have just the nicest clients. I can't say enough about all of my current clients and how wonderful they are. And that is really a breath of fresh air, I think, especially for maybe the burned out physician out there who's just having a tough time in your office environment. It's a real change of pace because I think everybody in medical writing is very cognizant of the fact that like lives are not hinging on what we do. And
Right.
it just is a lot more relaxed and it's really laid back. And yeah, so recurring clients and maintaining those relationships is key.
Yeah, and you'll probably, well, I'm not gonna say probably, you'll never be sued as a medical writer. I don't think it's even
I hope not. I have
conceivable.
insurance in case I
Do
do.
you, just in case? Okay, but
Yeah,
yeah, but it's very
errors and
cheap
omissions
compared to
insurance.
medical malpractice.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you something, John. My errors and omissions insurance actually costs more money per year than my malpractice did my last year of practice.
Really? Wow,
I
were
was
you
only
doing high
practiced
risk
part-time.
pediatrics or what?
I was only practiced part-time, so that affected the malpractice insurance, but it's what happens when you get into these non-clinical roles that aren't well understood by the general public is the insurance company just hears that you're a doctor and that's
Oh,
all they
I
can.
see.
And so yeah,
Gets
yeah.
inflated.
It's
Uh,
it's but it's one of those things you learn along the way about running a business. You just figure it out.
yeah, there always some expenses in that, of course. But
Mhm.
the other thing, just to give us an idea, like about how many regular relationships, for recurring work do you have at any given time?
Um, okay, I'm a little ambitious. I would say I'm working usually for a project at some stage or another, maybe for 10 different clients at a time.
Okay.
That's going to totally vary depending on the type of work that you do, though,
Hmm.
and how many hours and what types of projects. CME projects tend to span a number of months to put together. So it's a little more feasible to be working on multiple of them at once because they're all different stages. So it just totally depends. Some people will, and I don't recommend this to tell you the truth. I mean, some people will take on a freelance client that's giving them 30 hours a week of work. So then that person is kind of giving you 75% of your work hours, and that's
Hmm.
fine. Again, it's a good way to get started, but I feel more comfortable having multiple streams of income in case one of them goes away. To me, that's really the comfort in freelancing as opposed to employed work. So I'm not sure everybody's answer would be the same, but I would say for me, give or take 10 clients at a time.
And I have to assume you have some kind of master calendar where you can figure out, well, this is a 3 month project, this is a 6 month or a 2 month, and so let's fit it here.
Kind
And like you
of.
said, these things are scheduled in advance, not like I need an article on this next weekend.
Flexibility is key as a medical writer, especially in the CME realm, because ultimately all the content I am creating is usually going to a key opinion leader in the field to review
Mm.
and to maybe present as a webinar. Those people are very busy. And
Mhm.
so delays happen all the time. And I'm going to show you since we're on video, but the listeners won't be able to see. I'm showing you right now my paper calendar that I fill in with a pencil
Okay.
because things change.
Hmm.
And that was a technique my business coach taught me that has been very useful. So you have to be able to roll with the punches. If it's gonna throw you for a loop that somebody says, "Oh, this is delayed a week," then you want to consider that when you are specializing within the medical writing realm.
Very good. No, that helps a lot. I'm going to go back to something you talked about at the very beginning of the types of work that you do, because to me, I couldn't figure out how you would find those jobs. And you were talking about working for advisory boards.
Yes.
And that seems like something that wouldn't have like an easy way to find, but is there a way?
It doesn't because it's kind of a popular thing to do and it's kind of you get in there and you get to know people. It's a networking thing.
Mm.
So the way that people are recruited for advisory boards is often through medical communication companies. I have been contacted before because some of these advisory boards are filmed or audio recorded. I have been contacted by the companies that are doing the recording.
Mm.
They've been asked to hire a medical writer, so, it just kind of depends. But yeah, it's not the easiest one to chase after. It's a little more falling into it, and making connections over time, because it becomes one of those relationships with your fellow medical writers kind of thing. Oh, I got called about this. I can't do it. It's a date. I already have something else. Are you able to go? So, um, you know, interestingly, advisory boards all used to be travel. Then, of course, during COVID, they went to Zoom. And it's not a huge piece of what I do right now, but I know people who do many. And what I'm told is it's kind of split now. So some are still on Zoom, but some people are back to traveling. So depending on how
Mm.
you feel about travel, that's going to influence whether covering advisory boards is interesting to you or not.
Okay. It's good to know. Well, let's see. We're going to run out of time here soon. Any other tactics or things we should know about if we're thinking about getting into this field?
I think that, and this is similar to a lot of non-clinical fields. I know I've said this already in the podcast, but really networking and putting yourself out there to meet people is really the key. I have a lot of people who come to me and say, I found all these medical writing jobs on LinkedIn and I applied and I never get a response. And I'm like, yeah, you're not going to. That's just not the way to get a job in medical writing. And as you know, networking can sound like a very intimidating term. And I don't mean it in the sense of, schmooze people. And I certainly have people, very direct people reach out to me on LinkedIn, like, do you have any work for me? No, that's not the way to do it. But the way to do it is to reach out to other physician medical writers. Hey, do you have 15 minutes? I can pick your brain about your career, or it's sort of an informational interview type of situation, and just getting involved, getting to meet people. You never know where a connection is going to lead. So I'll tell you that a few of my first clients, how I got them was I was on a Facebook group for women physicians, and this was during COVID, and I had just, embarked on my full-time medical writing career, and a woman posted in the group about being a medical director for a CME company, and her conference is being canceled. And what do people think? And I said, oh, you're a medical director for a CME company. I've been writing needs assessments for CME, but I don't really know what a medical director is. Could I talk to you about that? And we talked on the phone, and it turns out we went to the same medical school. She's like 20
Oh
years
boy.
older than me, but we went to the same school, and she's lovely. And I now call her my godmother of medical writing. And she connected me with now 3 of my current clients. So you just don't know. You can't expect something from every conversation that you have with somebody, because it's not going to be the case. But you can expect to make friendly contacts, and something's going to lead somewhere. So it really is just that putting yourself out there is going to be more productive for moving your career forward than clicking that apply button on LinkedIn.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but LinkedIn is another place to do research. And my recommendation is that they go to, for example, your LinkedIn profile and other medical writers' profiles, because they will see the names of a bunch of companies that they could
That's
possibly
right.
talk to.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I'm the first person to say, I didn't mention this. Besides being a medical writer, I'm also a resume writer and LinkedIn profile writer. So, but I'm always open to say to people, if you're not sure, what to put in your LinkedIn profile, go to mine. Like, check it out. You can
That's right.
borrow it. Please don't copy it exactly, but if you need an idea of what to put in a LinkedIn profile to get noticed as a medical writer, yeah, please look me up. Absolutely. And importantly, AMWA, the American Medical Writers Association, also has a freelance directory that is a similar, like, tiny version of LinkedIn. And if you join and get the freelance membership, you can have a listing in there. I get tons of clients from there. So that's
Nice.
another good place to get your information out there, because, yeah, networking is key, but people are also going to find you as long as you put the right information out there.
And I'm thinking if the listeners are interested in medical writing, they might want to actually talk to you directly. So why don't you tell us where we can find you? Of course, we know LinkedIn, and actually, I think it's just your name, so they can look
Mhm.
that up and find you pretty
Morgan Leaf.
easily.
And my last name is Leaf, as in Frank E. So like a leaf on a tree with an E at the end. My website is morganleafmd.com. And you can reach me by email, morgan@morganleafmd.com. And if you're interested in what a medical writing portfolio looks like for collecting your samples, or what types of pieces you might be interested in or wanting to write, and how to put together a portfolio for yourself, you can check my portfolio out, which is Turn Over a New Leaf, and that's LEAFE, Turn Over a New Leaf with an E.com.
Excellent. Yeah, I looked at both of those, and it's pretty nice the way you've got it broken down on the portfolio page. It's a lot more detailed than just looking at your LinkedIn profile, but looks very nice.
Thank you.
Let's see. I think that's all that we need today. Is a lot of information there. I will put links to everything that we talked about in terms of, some of those resources at the beginning and AMWA and anything I can capture. And so that'll make it easy for listeners and viewers if they're looking at the YouTube version of this. So, yeah, any other last bits of advice for our listeners before I let you go?
I would just say I'm so enthusiastic about medical writing. Changing careers was one of the best things I've ever done in my life, and it's a great fit for folks who want to travel, part-time, full-time, freelance, employed. There's so many different options, and I'm just a big advocate of getting as many physicians as we can into the field, especially because so much of the content that is generated is intended for us. So I hope that some folks who are listening today are inspired to check out medical writing, because it's a lot of fun.
Yes, I think you've been very inspirational. I like your story and your enthusiasm. It's been fantastic. So thanks, Morgan, for being here. I guess with that, I'll say goodbye.
Thanks, John.